The Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline.
What's up, everybody? Man, I don't even know where to begin tonight. Got a lot of stuff. Click, click, click. What are you telling me? I don't know. I wish I knew. Is my mic working? Yeah, okay. What's up? What's up? What's up? Man. That's what you hear during the... Oh, you hear my clicking? Yeah. Did you hear the music at all? Or just the clicking? Was it just clicks? No music? There's a delay in the chat, so I have to wait. Well, you could text me later. Yeah. I'm assuming you could hear the music. Let's try this real quick. Tell me if you can hear this.
Hi, I'm Tabitha Soren with MTV News. Just out in stores is a debut album by...
You could hear that too? Okay. Yeah, it's because if I mute myself, then I always forget to unmute when I start talking. So it's either I forget to unmute or you get to hear clicks. Yeah, so I took the boys. We went to go pick up some of our cows from the genetics place today. So that's mostly what I was doing today. And I wasn't really sure what am I going to talk about tonight. And I briefly watched part of an interview that was pretty interesting. A guy named Melvin Vopson, a physicist, I guess. And I'm going to play a little bit of it in a little bit here. But I got to set it up first, meaning set the scene. Because it, on the surface, it's an interesting conversation, but I want to tie it together with all the things we've been talking about. Because I'm, over the course of these streams, I'm actually making a point, whether it's obvious yet or not. There's a point I'm making, and I'm just kind of adding to it constantly, this basic point, because I know that our world it's not necessarily heading to a point. It's just the path that we're on as humanity is moving towards, on a path, let's say, of even just the individual average person really kind of losing their mind. I don't know how to put that in a less blunt way. And on the one hand, that might be a cool thing, because then you have to reconsider your whole starting point for your life. But at the same time, it's not a good thing, because our system is not set up to support people when they lose their mind, when they lose their sense of what is real, what is their purpose, when they face a lot of the existential questions that most people either never look at or just suppress. It's hard for me to imagine people don't actually consider these questions, like, why am I alive? Why do things exist? I think a lot of people do at some level, but I don't know the degree to which everybody really looks at it. And I think probably most people are so stuck in survival mode that they don't really have time to think about it. And even sitting and dwelling on these things kind of takes you away from just doing what you need to survive or to be productive or creative or whatever. Some people take this and make it a part of their creativity, but generally those people have a pre-programming that allows them to be disciplined and creative, artistic, whatever. So that's just kind of the general point of why I'm doing these streams, is I want to show that, but also support people as they're going through that, to realize that, there is a solution to all of this for humanity. And some of the stuff I'm saying might just sound crazy to some people. They might just be like, whatever, because they haven't really faced the point yet. But I think, what I've noticed, a lot of the things that I've studied, a lot of the people I've studied, is the people who are more sensitive to the real problems in the world, they tend to become very depressed. They tend to become despondent. They tend to go into despair, or just, their mind totally cracks. Some people maybe have other responses to it, but they probably don't write books. I don't know. But speaking of books, so I've been reading this book. I read a little bit more of it last night. It's called Operators and Things: The Inner Life of a Schizophrenic. And it's pretty good. It's well written. It's interesting. And it's kind of a mix between somebody like that Daniel Schreiber book, where he's basically totally just accepting his delusion. This person, I guess, apparently was able to get out of their delusion, although I don't know what happened to them ultimately, because I think they wrote this book anonymously, and the person who published it, I'm trying to see, I don't think ever actually talked to them directly. This book was originally published through a publisher. I think like the woman who wrote the book had it published, but was kind of like doing it from an anonymous perspective. So no one really knows who actually wrote it. It's written under a synonym. But apparently it's been kind of influential. The psychiatrist R.D. Laing was heavily, I guess, affected or influenced by this book. And it was concluded in the 1959 review in the Archives of General Psychiatry. It's been, I guess, influential in some cases. But it's kind of a balance between somebody who can very lucidly describe what they experienced, but also is aware that they were delusional, apparently. But I was not expecting the first chapter. So like the very first intro section, I talked about it last night, I think. And it's like the author describing what it's like to suddenly have a schizophrenic like break, where you start having a real hallucination that seems out of your control, but doing it more like in an analogous way. So it's not really a part of the story. But there was some interesting things in here where she says, according to statistics released by the National Association for Mental Health, and now this book was published. Actually, when was this published? It says 1958. It doesn't really make sense because... See, I don't know if this section here is written by the author or somebody else, because it mentions 1976, so... That's kind of confusing. It's hard to tell what's really going on with that. Oh, I see. Okay. That section was added in 1976 by the author. That's why it makes sense. Hold on. Let me turn off that AC real quick, and I'll come right back. Okay, yeah. So I was just a little slightly confused because I'm like, why are they talking about 1976? So she wrote the book in 58 or whatever, and then later added another introduction basically to it. Okay, so that would explain that part. So according to statistics released by the National Association for Mental Health, your chance of being hospitalized for a severe mental illness during your lifetime is, in 1957, if you are an American, 1 in 12. In 1946, it was 1 in 16. In 1936, it was 1 in 20. An 11 out of 12 chance of escaping insanity is not too bad. The odds are not as good as 19 out of 20. However, they are considerably better than the 4 out of 5 chance, which seems to be looming on the horizon for 1976. If you are the unlucky 1 in 12, there's a 60% to 70% chance that the mental disease you develop is a variety of schizophrenia. It is the mounting rate of increase in this one mental disorder which is crowding every mental institution in this country. Just why schizophrenia should be the great insanity trap for the American emotional makeup is not certain. Nor is it by any means certain that schizophrenia is emotional in origin. It may or may not be the result of unbearable environmental pressures. It may or may not be the result of endocrine gland disorders. Or it may be the result of a diet lacking in sufficient amino acids or some other substance. All of these theories, so basically there's not a lot of people studying it at the time. And this is interesting too. It says, at the rate at which schizophrenia is increasing, there's a reasonable chance that if the intercontinental missile doesn't get you, schizophrenia will. So this is at the time during the Cold War. Your chances of being hit by a flying missile haven't yet been determined, although your chances of remaining intact if hit may be surmised. Your chances of being hit by schizophrenia in the immediate future are higher, and your chances of making a comeback if hit aren't much better. So that was like an intro that she added later. But the actual first chapter of the book, part 1, actually, it's actually the second chapter. Well, it's called part 1. Chapter 1, she kind of starts the story at the end. And then in chapter 2, it goes into like the beginning. And it's interesting because this chapter is called Before the Operators Came. And this first chapter isn't really about her schizophrenia. Part 2 starts with the operators, and that's where she wakes up and there's like these kind of soft, fuzzy ghosts in front of her that start talking to her. But I was kind of surprised by this chapter called Before the Operators Came. It's confusing at first. And I'm just going to read a little bit because I was like, it's kind of profound. It says, whenever I think of the hook operators now, I see a picture of a man with a hook stuck in his back. The hook is attached to a rope, and the rope hangs from a ceiling. At the end of the rope, unable to get his feet on solid ground, the man dangles in the air, his face distorted in agony, his arms and legs thrashing about violently. Behind him stands the hook operator. Having operated his hook successfully, the hook operator stands by with his other instruments, the knife and the hatchet. He watches the thrashing man, speculating, considering. If necessary, he will move in and cut the victim's throat, or with his hatchet cleave through the victim's head. The hook operator is a maker of tools, and if he is an expert tool maker, the hook alone will serve his purpose. The victim, in his thrashing to be free of the hook, will most likely cut into his back the crippling gorge the hook operator seeks. The hook operator waits and watches. What a man will do once he is caught on that hook is always a gamble. There is the chance, of course, that the man may squirm off the hook, in which case the hook operator will move in with his other weapons. Now, so far, it sounds really weird and dark, and, like, crazy, right? Like, what the hell is she talking about? But she elaborates a little bit more on this hook operator. And then she goes on to tell the story of working at this company, which she uses a fictional name, although she only did that to obscure it, so that because she said she didn't want to bring any embarrassment to any of the people that she used to work with or anything. That wasn't her intention. So she uses fake names, but she's saying she's describing like her actual experience. She goes on to describe working at this company, which it doesn't really say what it does, but there's some kind of, I don't know, they sell something, obviously. And they must design things because there's like a design department. And she goes on to describe, well, actually, let me read a little bit. You'll see what I mean. So I'm going to skip all the other parts about hook operating. Considering the amount of hook operating that goes on in business organizations, it is surprising how little understanding of it exists among young people before they enter business. My own education for business was thorough enough, but I never had a course on how to recognize hook operating when you see it. Even a short lecture would have been helpful. It would have brought into focus a picture for my memory to store away. As it was, I had to attempt to fit pieces of a jigsaw puzzle together without any guide and without much notion of what the picture was going to be when it was completed. I went to work for the Knox Company for the same reason that a great many other people did. Knox was mushrooming overnight into a big company. Profits were high, and the rich, oily smell of money hung over the plant. I was new to business, and I was concerned, as are a considerable number of young women who, when they start to work, in discovering the answer to, how do I get into the big salary class? With all that money around, and with the technical background I had, there seemed to be a reasonable chance that I might latch on to some of it. Almost immediately, an answer of sorts developed right in front of me. I had been working only a few days when the company announced that a new design department would be opened within a month. And that a young fellow named Ken Ryers, a pleasant, soft-spoken chap who sat a few desks away from me and who had been working for Knox less than a year, would be promoted to the position of manager of the new department. The thing I recall most vividly about Ken was that his head was always buried in his blotter, and that if you wanted to get his attention, you had to stand almost on top of him and speak very loudly. It's just that he concentrates hard, his girl used to say of him. He actually forgets everything except what he's doing. Maybe that's why he turns out so much work. I remember that I looked at the dark head that was always buried in a desk blotter and thought, that's how it's done. It's simple and sweet. You sit at your desk and keep turning it out. If you're just a little better, and if you turn it out for 8 hours a day instead of the 6 hours a day that most people are willing to give, you're made. The picture of hard-working Ken getting a big promotion after only a short time with Knox had the kind of clear illustrative quality you see in the graphs in junior high school books, drawn in clear, broad lines and painted in bright lollipop colors. The picture was easy to understand, and I decided not at all difficult to follow through on. I could see myself within a few years with a big fat salary, vacationing in Europe and writing postcards from Paris. I found myself looking up frequently at Ken's dark head and feeling grateful to him for getting me started so early on the right track. Perhaps it was because I looked at Ken so often that I became aware that someone else was doing the same. A little pasty-faced fellow who sat on the other side of the room. His name was Gordon, and he smoked a great deal, not nervously, but deliberately and slowly, as if he were testing and evaluating each cigarette. Some 30 days later, when the new design department was opened, and Gordon was installed as department manager, I was one of many who walked around with blank faces and raised eyebrows. One of the girls, in a hurried whisper, gave me as clear an answer as I was able to get for some time. Quote, Ken said something terrible about Knox Sr. It must have been really awful because nobody can find out what we said. Knox called Ken in and had it out with him, and Ken got mad and said Knox was crazy for believing such trash. One word led to another, and Ken really let loose. He's all washed up now. So, let's see. I've made some sharp revisions in my ideas of how people get ahead fast in business since the day I looked at Ken and saw how clear it all was. The thing you need is a special kind of skill that Ken didn't have and could never have developed. It's the technique of the hook operator. Many people are horrified when they come upon hook operating, and their first reaction is, that's something I could never stoop to doing. But actually, the reason that a great many people don't become hook operators is because it's not at all easy to be one. They're clever, the hook operators, and ingenious and resourceful. And they give every bit of their talent and energy to the business of hook operating. To understand a hook operator, it is best to study him from the first clay that he sets his nimble, cloven foot inside the door of an organization. think that's a typo. I think they meant day, but there's a few typos in here. A hook operator has a nose for power, and as soon as he enters an organization, he follows his nose until he comes upon the individual who's giving off the strongest odor. Having spotted him, the hook operator feels out the power man for his soft spot until he knows the exact location of the spot and its degree of softness. And then she goes on to give like the account of how she saw, and she kind of explains the hook operator more, but basically it's like a really devious person who works in a company, and she gives several examples in the company of like different people who do this, where in the case of Gordon and Ken, Gordon basically finds the weak spot in one of the Knox Senior, like the owner of the company, who's like the namesake of it. It's a family business. And he's got like 6 sons that work there, and they're all basically, she says dull, but they're basically retards that have no competence. They would never be that high in a business. They're all like, high salary. And she said they would never succeed in a business that wasn't run by their father, because he's like just putting them there basically. And it's like he knows they're dumb, and that's like a sore spot for him. And that's just one of the points she points out. And she says like this guy Gordon, for example, knew how to manipulate that and make the Knox Senior guy feel that the Ken guy, although she never goes into detail because she never found out, but she could just put it all together, that basically he was creating the impression in Knox Senior that Ken like didn't respect him or something like that. And then when he confronted Ken, he was like, "How dare you accuse me of that?" And then it just became a big blow up, and then now Ken's out of the picture, and then Gordon is able to take the position. And this, she describes like several iterations of this throughout her 7 years working there, to the point where eventually one of these hook operators was the guy right over her, and she's like, "I'm so screwed." And it kind of all like was like pressurizing inside of her, because you see like the pressure of wanting to make a lot of money and move up in the company, and then also seeing like every time somebody gets promoted, why they get promoted. And it's not because they're the hardest worker. It's not because they're the most competent. It's because they're the hook operators. And they know how to like, you might just call it office politics or stabbing people in the back, whatever, you name it, right? And it kind of comes to a point where she's like, actually, I'll read that part because it's pretty fascinating. This guy McDermott, who ends up, because of the manipulations of this, so McDermott ends up manipulating one of the younger brothers to basically stab his other brother in the back and get him out of the company. So I'll just read this last little section. "I suppose that I had a certain degree of security." Actually, I'm going to back up a little bit because there's some really fucking good points in here, man. It's really interesting. "I worried over McDermott so much that I finally had to erase him from my mind and pretend that he wasn't what he was, and that the things that were happening weren't happening. When you reach that stage with fear, you start growing strange plants of distortion in your mind. The best comparison I can think of is to illustrate this mental process occurs in George Orwell's 1984. An entire staff of government employees spend their time rewriting the files of old newspapers and documents, changing Hertz so that the facts agree with whatever propaganda program the government has in progress. You do this to yourself mentally when you set about deliberately distorting a picture you can see clearly. By the time you have twisted the facts to agree with the picture you wish to see, your subconscious mind has helpfully plotted through the past and distorted a lifetime of facts to make them agree with your present self-deception program. I suppose that I had a certain degree of security from having Jim Knox's confidence, and that this factor would have kept me stabilized for a long time. I never did lose Jim's confidence, except that all the things that Jim stood for in the way of security to me disappeared overnight." So it's like she had his confidence, this guy Jim Knox, who was like high up in the company, one of the sons. So she felt a little bit of safety from that because, he liked her. And she kind of goes into more detail about what that relationship was like, but it was, a business relationship. So this way of security to me disappeared overnight. Not McDermott, but another man, Litter, did a job on Jim. Litter used the youngest of the Knox boys to hook Jim, and I know that I was shaken out of my dull avoidance of what was going on by the realization that even the Knoxes were willing to hatchet each other. The youngest Knox was the dullest of the lot and had the least chance of getting into a plush job even in his father's organization. Maybe that helped him to see things Litter's way. When the earthquake was over, Jim was working in a field job, and the youngest Knox was supervising Jim's department with Litter as his assistant. And all the sense of security I had in my relations to the Knox family was gone. I was left in a room with Litter's shark eyes making holes in me and a cold chill in my spine. A short time later, I left Knox. I didn't leave it in a way I could possibly ever have anticipated. I never blamed anybody for the months that were to follow except myself. Litter might have done a job on me in time, but he didn't get the chance. I walked out of Knox with a hook in my back that was entirely of my own making. When I finally pulled it out and had a good look at it, I decided that nobody could have stuck it in my back except myself. And the only satisfaction I got was that I was able to pull it out myself and see clearly the shape of it. So then she describes, so this is before she leaves the company. So she alludes to the fact that she's going to leave at some point, but then the next part, as far as I can tell, she still works there. And she wakes up, and there's these three guys in her room that look kind of like fuzzy ghosts. One was like a 12-year-old boy, one was an elderly man, and the third was just a guy that looked really weird. And basically, they explain to her that they're the operators and that humans don't actually make choices. They're operated by operators. They call humans things. And they're basically... And then there's all this weird noise that's going on, and they're like, oh, it's the city council for the operators. There's one in every city. And we're doing an experiment. We're telling you about the operators. We're not supposed to. We're going to get basically punished, which means we won't be allowed to be able to operate anybody anymore. So you can't, you got to get out of here because the city council is going to come and they're going to destroy you because they don't want any humans to know that there's operators. So they're like, you need to get a bus ticket and leave. So she gets a bus ticket and leaves. And actually, before that happens, they're talking to her. And then I feel like they don't necessarily explain all of that right away. Maybe they do. I feel like there was another part to it where she goes back to work. Yeah, it's like she sees these people in her room. They talk to her. She eventually goes to work that day, does her work, leaves early, comes home, and that's when they explain to her, you got to get out of here. You got to leave town. So then she gets on a bus, leaves, ends up having seems like a panic attack or a heart attack or something. And then she goes to the hospital in this strange town that, she doesn't live in. And then they take her to a mental institution. And then she is there for a bit, and then the operators tell her what to say to get out. So she gets out, and then the next chapter, she's back on a Greyhound bus, going somewhere else, I guess. So I explain all that in the context of, to me, when I'm reading it, it's like it was the pressure of working in that environment, And some people, they live their whole lives just in that environment, doing something they don't really want to do, but they don't care. The money's fine. It takes care of them. They're comfortable. But I think, when we go back to that Deleuze and Guattari Anti-Oedipus book, seems like one of the basic arguments they're making is that schizophrenia is sort of a product of the capitalist system. It's sort of like the ones who are kind of pushed aside in a way from the system and sort of break out of the mold a little bit. It's not glorifying it. It's not saying schizophrenia is a fun thing or something. It's just it's like the ones that the system can't keep under control. Those people become schizophrenic. And it's cool too, because she explains later in the book, she realized that the operators was just her unconscious mind, which is pretty interesting. So that's kind of eventually how she came to terms with it. But just that point of people, of the pressures in the system, And I think for a lot of people, their job, their occupation, their life experience, it kind of keeps them on track, so they never really face these points. But the reason why I can see it's gonna become more and more of a problem is because right now the system is like, it's moving in a way where there's going to be less obvious work that people can do, perhaps with the exception of become an electrician, become a plumber, basically do the physical work to build the data centers, right? But at a certain point down the road, they're not going to need as many of those people. Just like how many people work on railroads versus how many people built them in the first place. I mean, I don't know what it takes to maintain them, but probably less than there were people employed to build them in the first place, I would assume, at some level. It's like a lot of these companies, they build up with a lot of employees and they get rid of them all because they don't really need them to operate. And so I just see this point where it's like we're moving in a direction where, because of AI, because of more automation, we saw that live stream with these robots. They're still going, by the way. It's been like over 40 plus hours, and there's 50 hours, I think, when I last checked. And they still got the robots on the assembly line, scanning the packages. They're still going. They said they're going to go until the robots completely fail and see how long it takes. And they've sorted over like 90,000 packages by this point, in the past couple of days. So, and that's just one area, and I hear this argument of, oh, there's going to be so many data centers that need to be constructed and maintenance that people are going to have jobs. And I'm like, I don't think most people want to do those kind of jobs anymore. I'm sure there will be plenty of people who will, but I think there's a lot of people, like, none of these fucking white collar people are going to want to go do that. There's going to be a lot that are going to just be totally screwed and not know what to do with their life. That's what I see is coming. And there's going to be a lot of resentment, I think, towards the system, towards AI, towards robotics. I saw this... is this my Chrome? Yeah. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. I don't know what that was. Like, I saw this, for example. Here's Larry Fink at BlackRock. Declares a preemptive war. I mean, this guy's like kind of hyperbolic interpretation of it, but let's just see what he says first.
But now, because of drone warfare, we have to relook at all forms of security and the need for rebuilding the GCC region, to rebuild it so that it's going to be in a position where it's not going to be obstructed by drone warfare. So many more things are going to have to be underground. But even here in the United States, if we're going to be building, let's say, these 1 gigawatt data centers, how do we make sure we're not protecting those $50 billion, $75 billion investments? We have to re-look at everything because of the role of drone warfare. Right now we're looking at it internationally, but one of my concerns is, could it be a domestic terrorism using a $3,000 drone? So all of these things are actually opportunities, not problems. It's going to require, as we said, trillions of dollars of capital. Governments cannot build these out alone. They don't have the wherewithal, and two, their deficits are started mounting, and we spend too little time talking about the U.S. deficits and other countries' deficits. So this is all going to be the role of private sector.
So they already know what's coming. They already know people are going to be upset. They call it domestic terrorism, but it's just people who are fed up. And I'm not justifying that. Like, it's not a solution. It's only going to lead to more forms of crackdown, lockdown, security measures, etc. Dang, what is that? Doesn't look like a fly. It's like a wasp or something. Maybe I shouldn't try to grab it with my hand. But yeah, I just looked up data center protests because I'm seeing more of that being pushed on the algorithm now. This is the AI overview anyways, ironically. Community-led pushback against massive AI data center developments has become a widespread movement. See, I knew this would come eventually. With billions of dollars in projects blocked or delayed. Sorry, I didn't want you to see my drone warfare there. Grassroots coalitions and environmental groups are actively protesting these massive facilities across states like Utah, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Ohio over severe resource and environmental concerns. Thousands of residents in Utah and environmental groups have rallied to protest massive AI data center projects proposed for Box Elder County, raising concerns about the depletion of the Great Salt Lake and questioning the lack of public referendums. Pennsylvania, over 50 planned data centers face organized opposition from local networks and lawmakers. Yeah. We were kind of talking about some of this stuff last night. NAACP. Stop dirty data centers. Interesting. This guy sure says offline hustler, but he's got a phone. By 2030, data centers may consume as much as 12% of all U.S. electricity. So yeah. I'm going to show you some funny things first. Well, one funny thing, I suppose, and then I got a few other things planned. So, random. Oh, okay, yeah, no, I'll get there. Random thing. I think I was looking at some random Spotify playlist, which I don't really listen to Spotify that much, but the other day I was listening to some stuff, and one of the bands I like came up on the Outsider Music Artists playlist, a playlist somebody had made of Outsider music, and then I saw this random one, this guy named Wesley Willis. And this was the song, actually it wasn't this one. It was actually this song.
When I hear voices, my mind plays tricks on me. When it comes to hearing music on the streets, instead all I hear is profanity. It offends me everywhere I go. Shit and fuck. Shit and fuck. Shit and fuck. Shit and fuck. Shit.
Yeah, so it kind of goes on like that. And I was just like, what the hell is this? It sounds so just not good. And I didn't really get it. And then, so then I heard this one.
Let me find another job. It doesn't pay me enough money at all. I want a better one. I'm going to tell you this. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. Take this job and shove it. I'm not working for you anymore. Stick it up your ass. Suck my damn dick, asshole. Fuck your crummy ass jerk. Fuck you.
Immediately, I'm like, dude, is this guy schizophrenic? It just like clicked, right? Especially after I'd read this. I'm like, I think this guy's probably schizophrenic. Where's the other one? So then I was looking into him a little bit more. And he's got a song called Chronic Schizophrenia.
My mind plays tricks on me every time I say something. It brings evil voices out of my head and talks to me vulgar. Then suddenly I started raving. Chronic schizophrenia. Chronic schizophrenia.
That's the moment I was like, yeah, I think he's probably schizophrenic. And it's like, you know, I'm not saying the music is like particularly artistically good or something. And I think he's literally just got a keyboard, you know, like has like the preset sounds on it that like play music. I think he's just hitting play on those and then, you know, switching it to like the bridge or whatever and then just talking. And, but, you know, even though I'm laughing about it, it's like when I read that passage in here, where'd it go? That part where she said, the chance of being hospitalized for a severe mental illness during your lifetime in 1957 is 1 in 12. In 1946, it was 1 in 16. In 1936, it was 1 in 20. An 11 out of 12 chance of escaping insanity is not bad. Not as good as 19 out of 20, but better than the 4 out of 5 chance, which seems to be looming on the horizon in 1976. So in the 30s, it was 1 in 20. In the 40s, it was 1 in 16. In the 50s, it was 1 in 12. And it looks like she's saying 4 out of 5, or so 1 in 5 chance in the 70s. And I was like, dude, it just kind of made me feel sad, you know, like that our system is just abusing people, really. It's just abusing people for the sake of creating more money. And you listen to, like, you know, we were showing BlackRock CEO, like, they don't give a fuck. And I'm not trying to attack him personally. It's just, we got to realize, like, the people who, they're psychopathic. You got basically the psychopaths, and then you've got schizophrenics, depressives, bipolars. Everybody's fucking mentally ill. And if you're, like, not seeing a problem with what's going on in our reality, you're mentally ill. Period. But I wonder what the actual statistics are. Mental illness in 2026. I don't know if they have current statistics. 23 U.S. adults, apparently. High acuity, serious mental illness now affects 6% of the adult population. Modern stressors. Anxiety remains widespread, fueled by economic uncertainty, AI-driven job market changes, and the isolation of hyper-connected but human-distant digital environments. What the fuck do you think is going to happen as we build all these data centers? You think that's going to get better? See, and this is part of the psyop, is it's like, well, it's all just genetic. You got these issues. It's just you. It's not the system at all. Right? This is one of the points they were making in that Deleuze and Guattari. That was like in the 70s, I think, when they wrote that. So it's just totally ignored. AI-driven tools and virtual reality sessions are being rolled out as ways to bridge the gap in an overburdened healthcare system. What was the issue? They're like, you know what would help? Less human connection in healthcare. More digitality. The system has one digit for you. One digit. And it's in the middle of all the other 4 digits. More Americans reject. Go away. Plan mental health resolutions. I'm going to get more mentally healthy. This year, I'm going to work on that mental health this year. 2 days later. Can't be bothered. Anxiety heading into the new year. Personal finances, 59%. Anxious, somewhat or very. Uncertainty of the next year, 53%. Current events, 49%. Physical health. Mental health, job security, relationships with friends and families, keeping New Year's resolutions, romantic relationships. And keep in mind, this includes the boomers, I think. Yeah, to prove my point, younger adults are leading this trend. 18 to 34, 58% more likely to report on planning a mental health resolution, which means they're fucked up mentally. Compared with older adults, 32% of 45 to 64-year-olds, 11% of those 65 and older. It's encouraging to see more individuals planning to prioritize their mental health in 2026. Time in nature, engaging in therapy. How common is anxiety? Common. So yeah. Shit and fuck. I can't get that song out of my head. I mean, it's almost like I'm hearing it all the time. Okay, so this might seem kind of random, but oh yeah, that was why. So, do you guys remember Pearl Jam? It was like a big part of my childhood because it was always on the radio. Just so fascinating how much that kind of shit just affects you. For a long time, it probably hasn't been at least 10 years or more. But for a long time, I couldn't listen to this. It's not like I couldn't listen to it, but I really did not want to listen to the Cranberries. They were super popular at a period that was very tumultuous when I was a child in my life. It was a very tumultuous childhood time. And those songs were on the radio the whole fucking time. I listened to them much more recently, and they're actually really good. But I don't have that. I processed a lot of that stuff, so it's it doesn't affect me the same way. But that was kind of interesting. But I remember just when I was younger, hearing those songs, just being like, "Fuck that." But anyways, the song. There was two songs that stick out from my childhood from Pearl Jam: "Even Flow" and "Jeremy." That song "Jeremy" was playing all the time on the radio when I was in second or third grade. I think it must have been second grade. And the reason I was thinking about Pearl Jam, although it might seem kind of random, was... Let me see if I can find it. No, not that chapter. Oh, wait, it might be the first chapter, actually. I think it was... Hold on a second. There was this phrase in here. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Man, it was just a really cool phrase. I just can't find it now. I didn't have my pen with me to underline it. But she used the phrase "even flow." And I just thought it was so weird because I'm like, when has anyone ever used that phrase before? Made me think of that song. Where is it? It'll make sense if I can find it. I can't find it. I'm trying to remember what was the context, because that would help me find it. Dang. I cannot find it. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong chapter. But anyways, it's like she used this phrase, even flow, like speaking about the mind or her thoughts or something. And I was like, it was like a very poetic sort of phrasing. And I was like, I've heard that term before. So then I thought about, that made me think about that song, Even Flow from Pearl Jam. And I was like, were they referencing this? That would be so obscure if that were the case. I looked it up and I couldn't find anything that confirmed it. But what's weird about it, damn, I really wish I could find it. Maybe I just hallucinated it. Now, I just don't remember what chapter it was. I thought it was in this first chapter, but maybe it wasn't. Oh, well. Can't find it. But anyways, so she made this statement about, it was just part of what she was talking about. So the even flow. So I was like, well, what is that song about? So I looked up. How do I turn off Lizzo? I guess I can't. I looked it up. And the song Even Flow by Pearl Jam is about a mentally ill homeless person. And I was like, okay, that's a weird coincidence. I don't want to play the song. It's actually a really well done song, but I don't know if it's going to cause a problem when I upload this later. But, you know, if you know the song, it's pretty easy to remember how it sounds. It says, even flow, thoughts arrive like butterflies. And, like, it says, where is it? Rest his head on a pillow made of concrete again. Maybe he'll see a little better set of days. He can't help. When he's happy, he looks insane. Understands the weather of winter's on its way, few and far between all the legal halls of shame. And I just thought that was kind of a weird coincidence. And then that made me think about the song Jeremy, because I remember that being like a really impulse song when I was younger. And it's about this kid who killed himself in front of his classroom. And I remember they kind of like allude to it in the music video. I mean, imagine, I'm like in second grade hearing this shit, seeing these music videos. It's just so insane. Like totally insane. Daddy didn't give attention, oh, to the fact that mommy didn't care. King Jeremy the Wicked, oh, he ruled his world. Jeremy spoke in class today. He ended up shooting himself in front of all of his classmates. And there was a website dedicated to him, I guess his parents put up, about the kid. "15-year-old sophomore Jeremy Wade walked into his English classroom, committed suicide in front of 30 students and teachers, and his teacher." So that's where they got the inspiration for the song. The semi-unknown band Pearl Jam on their debut album. That's crazy. What's going on? My Phone's buzzing. But yeah, it's just one of the effects of the system. So I don't have anything particularly to conclude on that point. It was just kind of interesting. But Pearl Jam is a grunge band, so I looked it up. Like, what is grunge? That was like a big part of my childhood. I grew up, I went to kindergarten in, I think, 1989, 1990, something like that. So the 90s was my childhood. And grunge was really big at the time. Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, I don't know. A lot of alt rock, but grunge was really big. Grunge lyrics are typically dark, nihilistic, wretched, angst-filled, and anguished. So imagine this is like the... and this is my experience, right? This is like, I'm one individual in this reality, right? So, but I'm just looking at how all the things that happened in the system that I live in affected me. And this is the major kind of music that was popular at the time when my parents got divorced and my mom left me with my dad. Me and my brother with my dad. And I'm like, imagine that experience, and then you've got this all going on, like impulsing you constantly. It's interesting when you look at all of the subconscious, like, impulsing. Angst-filled and anguished, often addressing themes such as social alienation, self-doubt, abuse, assault, neglect, betrayal, social isolation, emotional isolation, psychological trauma, and desire for freedom. An article by MIT states that grunge lyrics were obsessed with disenfranchisement and described a mood of resigned despair. Songs were usually about negative experiences or feelings, with the main themes being alienation and depression, but with an ironic sneer. Interesting. Grunge lyrics were less overtly political than punk songs. Grunge songs still indicated a concern for social issues. The main themes in grunge were tolerance of difference, support of women, mistrust of authority, cynicism towards big corporations. Grunge song themes bear similarities to those addressed by punk rock musicians. There's a feeling of burnout in the culture at large. Kids are depressed about the future. So, if I'm bringing it up in the context of now it's 2026, same shit's going on. Same stuff. Really fascinating. A broken world and a fragmented self-image. So, interesting. Okay. So, the kind of point I want to get to, although it seems like maybe like a jump, I was listening to this interview today with this guy, Melvin Vopson, and it was on this guy, what's his name? Peter McCormick's show. And I think I had played some clips the other day with Roman Yapolsky, because he was on this guy's thing right before this. I think it was like his previous upload, talking to Roman Yapolsky about simulation theory. And then he's got Melvin Vopson on here, which is interesting. It's almost like this guy's kind of going down a rabbit hole here. And the first time I'd become aware of him was listening to Jason Giorgiani talking about like information theory, which I never really went into this on the stream yet, the whole idea of the information catastrophe. Because I didn't feel like I really understood it well enough to speak about it and not, I don't know. I was just a little bit skeptical, I guess. And I'm still kind of skeptical just in terms of some of the theory behind the information catastrophe. Let me sum it up like this. See if I can sum it up So this is not something I'm saying I support the theory. I'm just explaining what it is. So basically, it's the idea that, and we might have touched on this a little bit before in a stream. I don't remember, but I know for sure a few weeks back we talked about Maxwell's demon and entropy, and that was just because I thought it was interesting and I had seen the video a long time ago. There was no real point to me showing it other than just kind of like showing you something interesting. But then later I'm watching a Jason Giorgiani video and he's talking about entropy and information. And this idea, although this is the part I'm skeptical about, not because I don't believe it, I'm just like not really sure yet the details of it, but the idea that information itself, okay, well, actually, let me explain it. You have matter and you have energy. Matter can be converted into energy and vice versa. That's E equals mc squared, right? But there's another state of matter, according to the theory, which is information. And they're considering it in this information physics point of view, that information is actually another form of matter. And the idea being that if you store information, that is an increase in entropy, according to Claude Shannon information theory. They're using the word entropy differently than they use it in physical systems, though. So this is where I'm like skeptical, because I'm like, well, they mean different things. So if you're trying to apply the meaning over here onto information theory, is there like a sort of a logical jump you're making? But I'll just suspend skepticism for a moment. So the idea is when you store information on a computer, that increases entropy, although it's counterintuitive because you would think if information is organized, structured matter, you would think that's less entropy, but in information, it's the opposite. That's the counterintuitive part. And when you're storing the information, if it's increasing entropy, that must mean there must be an equivalent mass. And when you delete the information, it releases heat. And we talked about that with the Maxwell's demon and all that. So the idea is if you store information and it gets released as heat, which they can observe, apparently, that means it must have been stored in the first place, and it's like an equivalent form of mass. And if you're storing mass as information, that could affect gravity. And when you look at the amount of information storage accumulation that's occurring, especially as data centers come online, it doubles every year, but that could accelerate with all the AI stuff and the data centers. The amount of information that exists currently being stored is about 1 kilogram, apparently, if you do this mass conversion. But by the year by 340 years from now, if information storage increases at a constant rate in 340 years, we'll have a mass equivalent of information stored in computers on the Earth, equivalent to the mass of the moon, compared to the 1 kilogram now. And therefore, that could cause a problem gravitationally, if we assume that it does have a gravitational effect because it's actually a form of mass. That's the part I'm a little skeptical about. Where's the actual... And I read a few research papers that were kind of pushing back on the theory, and they talked about the difference between a phase transition and the other type is I'm blanking on it right now. And it kind of made sense. Like, it just seems like maybe the people are skipping over that point. So that's why I'm like, I don't know. I don't really put much credence on this whole idea, this whole theory. So I'm not like having some worry about it. Like, oh no, it's going to cause a gravitational well on the Earth and distort the spin of the Earth and throw our planet out of balance. I don't, maybe. I mean, I don't know. I don't know enough to really know for sure if it's an actual real problem or if it's an imaginary problem. Okay, so that aside, the other stuff that the guy is saying, I think is very interesting about the simulation theory. And I'm only exposing these things to everybody on the stream just to show you like all the things that are out there that people are now looking at. And I'm like, it's so crazy to me because back when I was in college, so this would have been around 2003, that's when I started looking into this kind of stuff. And it's amazing to me that now it's like what everybody's talking about. To me, it was interesting. It was fascinating. But nobody, I mean, it was like people like Rick Kurzweil and those kind of people that were talking about it. But now it's like just your average podcaster is interviewing people talking about, are we living in a simulation? Like, you know, and this guy, Vopson, he says a similar thing to what Yapolsky said on the previous episode of this guy's show, which I'm going to play that and then I'll maybe comment on it. But let me see if I can find it. I don't know if this is it. Let me see here. Let me switch it back. I don't know if this is the part or not, but let me see if I can. I might have to go back.
But that also has its own chicken and egg. But that also...
Evolution is Darwinism, all right? What I'm saying is that they're
Yeah,
both true.
I'm going to back it up to this part, I think.
If things contain information, DNA is information, right?
We are informational systems.
We're informational
It's
systems.
not just the whole body is informational, but we have another informational component in our brains. It's a super advanced biological computer with data storage, processing, and everything.
So if I...
Actually, man, I would just watch the whole thing, but let me start it back here, I think. Because he makes some really cool points about physical matter and designs of things.
Okay.
So we have solid,
Yeah.
that's stable. We have gas, is air and other things, okay, all the gases. We have plasma, that's like the sun, for example. Gas,
And liquid.
So liquid right here, okay. 4 states of matter that we are aware of, okay. The 5th one, I call it information. And it's not just the missing, the 5th element, if you've seen the movie, for
Yeah,
example.
of course.
The idea in that movie was exactly this. The 5th element was information encoded into the genetic makeup of this beautiful lady that was reconstructed from the genome.
One of my favorite movies, by the way.
It was information. The 5th element was information. And
Yeah.
so what I'm saying is that the 5th state of matter is information and is perhaps the dominant and the governing form of matter in the entire universe. In other words, before anything appears, before anything manifests or exists or takes shape, there is an information underlayer, and from there, this the rest of states of matter emerge.
And the creation of life is the merging of pieces of information.
Exactly, but if we get into that, the life itself, so that is a very strong point you are making there. I'm going to come back to that in a
Okay.
second.
You
I
come
just
back
want
to
to
that.
make another point on this. It's not just me saying this. It's John Wheeler. He's the legendary physicist. He worked on the Manhattan Project, and he's just a legend in physics. Okay, he is the guy who coined the phrase "eat from bit." He wrote in 1980s about the information being the fundamental aspect of the entire universe. He said that everything emanates, particles, fields, everything from choices of 1 and 0, yes, no, up, down. Everything can be reduced to these probabilistic states of information, either this or that, and you can reconstruct the entire mathematics, the physics, laws of physics, everything, digitize the universe if you want, eat from bit. And that, if you extrapolate a little bit, it suggests that the entire universe is some kind of construct which has an informational sublayer, that's some kind of computational construct. So your very first question was, why do I believe we live in a simulation? I've never researched that, and I'm not quite saying that. I'm saying that the science points to a computational process governing the universe.
Yeah, see, he's not saying we're in a simulation. That has its own sort of implications and assumptions. What he's getting at is the fact that our reality is running as a program. That doesn't mean it's a simulation on a computer and there's a higher level, because then you have a infinite regress anyways, because okay, but then what about the reality where the computer exists? What about that reality? Is that one running on a program? And how would it operate if it wasn't? How do things even relate to each other if they're not operating based on relationships, which are structures based on information, based on how they relate to each other? It's to have a universe that is relative and that you can relate to things within it. There has to be a program there. right? Otherwise, there's nothing to coordinate everything and to coordinate your experience and your perception. So if you go back to that interview we listened to a while back from Bernard called God and Ascension, that's what he's explaining there. And it's just fascinating to me when I listen to some of this stuff that he recorded over a decade ago, over even 15 years ago now. He was talking about all this shit before really anybody was talking about it. I'm not saying no one ever talked about things being a simulation, but he was going way beyond what these guys are talking about. But if you listen to it again with this context, it's like, oh, now people are starting to get kind of close to realizing we live in a programmed reality.
That could mean a simulation, but it could also mean some other explanations. For example, a universe computing itself.
Okay.
Like working like a giant computer, and computer says nobody doing it. It's just that's
Which is what Chris Langan. I know I have some of his books up there. I have his major papers up there. If you read or listen to some of Chris Langan stuff, that's how he kind of theorizes, I guess you could say, reality is as if it's a self-simulation where the computer and the simulation and consciousness is all one process that's simulating itself. So there is no computer that exists separately on which the simulation is running. The computer and the simulation, it's a self-simulation. It's one thing in itself.
how it works. But what it means the laws of physics and mathematics and everything, they are not the most fundamental things to explain the universe. It's computational rules and code that are actually governing everything, and these are emerging from these computational rules. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's like when you're looking at the laws of physics, I suppose, according to this, you're looking at the program. You're not looking at the code that makes the program work. So, like, you could have a program running, but it's based on a programming language, and built into the language itself is how the different basic functions operate and what the variables, or not even the variables, but like the basic definitions. Like in C++, you have integers, and that has a certain designation. You have decimal numbers, they're called like float or something like that, and they have a certain designation. It means that. It's defined as that. And then you can build a program using these defined things. So when you look at the laws of physics, they're not fundamental. They're more like the play out of the program itself that was coded prior to the laws of physics.
If things contain information, DNA is information,
Yeah.
right?
We are informational systems.
We're informational
It's
systems.
not just the whole body is informational, but we have another informational component in our brains. It's a super advanced biological computer with data storage, processing, and everything.
So if I provide the sperm and my partner provides the egg, we're both providing information which
Yeah.
is merged to create
Yeah.
life.
Yeah, but
See, this is gonna be a really good point here, which is why I always could. Actually, I wouldn't say I always could see this. When I was younger, I didn't, but I never really looked that far into evolution theory and stuff like that. I just never accepted there was a God. But this is the kind of fundamental flaw of pure atheism, in the belief that there is no designer. Because if humans are the first conscious, intelligent beings that have a designing capability, a programming capability, you can't really explain where everything comes from or why it got this way. You can't. Like, there has to be intelligence even behind that. That doesn't imply it's a benevolent God, though, obviously, any more than the person who created Minecraft is God. They're just a programmer that knew how to program the substrate of the program, in their computer.
this is evolution, okay? So
Yeah.
we are looking at evolution. The question is, how is the chicken and egg question, okay? How the first cell, living cell, or the first unicellular organism came about? How the first DNA came up? I mean, if you sit down and work the probabilities of even some modest amino acid
Yeah.
being formed randomly by random mutations in this soup of inorganic chemicals, okay? Randomly, okay, until some modest amino acid appears and it clicks in place that it does a function that is meant to do, okay? It will take longer than the age of the universe if you have a mutation, I think a second or a mutation, something like a mutation, as I have in the book this, I don't remember the exact numbers, but if you have a mutation taking place every second, something like that, it will take longer than the age of the universe to even form the most basic RNA something structure is. So what I'm saying here, I'm saying that
If you go and do a little basic, maybe we'll do this on another stream, but if you go and look into intelligent design, if you can ignore the deistic Christian assumptions within it, if you just look at the arguments based on the math and the probabilities, there's some quite interesting arguments. That's why, like, when people tell me, evolution explains everything, I'm like, you never fucking looked into it, really, with a skeptical mindset, with a, it's like the Bible. Yeah, if you believe it's all true from the beginning, then everything in it makes sense. If you believe evolution is true, then you don't really look at it from, okay, are there any things that don't make sense? They're all going to make sense in the context of evolutionary theory if you're not standing outside of it, looking at it objectively. If you're within it, accepting it from the beginning, you don't see the gaps, you don't see the holes in it. Just like a Christian doesn't see the obvious gaps and holes in their theology, their belief system, because they're not looking at it objectively from the outside. That's why I can see the holes in atheism, because I'm not an atheist. I don't adhere to a belief system like that where I'm like making assumptions and then accepting those assumptions must be true, because then you can't see the flaws. You won't see the holes because they would contradict your assumptions, and your mind automatically will assume they're not valid because they contradict your assumptions, so they can't be true. But the intelligent design proponents definitely have some really cool arguments to show that, like, it's not that there can't be any evolutionary processes, but it can't really explain everything completely.
It speaks
we
to
talk
design.
about evolution here, but we also talk about intelligent design. We talk about creation, okay? So which one is which? Okay, you talk to church people, they will say creation, of course. You talk to science people, they will say, oh, it's evolution, it's Darwinism, all right? What I'm saying is that they're both true. I'm saying that there was a process of seeding, there was a process of initial state being created, the rules set in place, and then let it go. And evolution took over, and then we see the complexity that we see today, and the world, the way it is, the universe, the life forms, and everything else. But there was creation at the point of creation. At some point, there was intelligent design.
But that also has its own chicken and egg. Who created the creator?
It's an epistemic sort of, you kick the can down the road, you are not answering, you are just shifting the problem somewhere else, okay?
I don't think you are, actually. I've been thinking of, when I heard this the first time, I really just kind of clicked, like, if you say, like, I'm just kind of steel manning the creationist argument, right? Which is, all things that you can observe obviously were created. They must have been created by something, and that thing is God. And then people say, oh, yes, but what created God? And you're like, well, but God's not included in the created things. And it's not like the best argument, but that is the argument. But if you take it a little bit more abstractly, and you just say, the thing which organizes the relationships between things, the designer, has to exist prior to the things that are designed, it makes a lot more sense. So let me think if I can explain that more clearly. Let me go back a little bit.
The universe, the life forms, and everything else, but there was creation at the point of creation. At some point, there was intelligent design.
But that also has its own chicken and egg. Who created?
It doesn't if you assume that self-awareness is fundamental to reality, and that self-awareness can reflect on itself as also being something that is in a way physical as well. If you go from the assumption of nothing exists, just the designer, just the creator, then that's where the problem comes in. Because you're like, well, then how does it... Like, if you have a creator that's just pure creative intent with no physical matter component whatsoever existing as itself or anywhere else, then you can't explain how this creator creates something out of nothing. And it's at that point, it's just magic. It's just like, you just want there to be a magical thing. The only way it can make sense is if there is physical reality, which also, as a fundamental property of it, is aware of itself. Now, within that being aware of itself, it could occur in a way where it sort of is not aware of itself as physical reality as itself. It can only be aware of itself as the awareness, if that makes sense. So you're aware of the physical reality, you're aware of your awareness, and as a part of that awareness, you believe that the physical reality that you're aware of is actually separate from you and not realizing it's you. It'd be like looking at your hand and not knowing it's you. Like, wow, look at this. I'm just aware of this thing. Like, imagine if you could take your awareness and put it outside of your body and just watch your body. And your body's moving, and you're like, isn't that interesting? What is that thing? Right? Not realizing it's you. So that's, I think, how you can get around the apparent contradiction of an infinite regress of like, well, if everything has a creator, what created the creator? And also the idea that the creator created physical reality out of nothing, because there's nothing about what Vopson is saying that implies that the designer can design without material. So he makes this point, I don't know if it's maybe a little later, about like, you know, if you look at this microphone, if you look at, you know, whatever you have in your room, a table, chairs, it existed in someone's mind first as that sort of basic design. You know, the microphone, there's a certain technology that converts sound waves into electrical impulses. That's a technology. Someone had to design that as well. So there's a lot of components to it. Maybe it wasn't one person that designed all of it, but all the different points that come together. At one point, somebody had to be like, I could put all these different things together and make a microphone. But it existed in a way as information first before. Now, that doesn't mean the physical components didn't already exist, but the design, the structuring of it existed as a informational construct that then organized physical matter into this form. But then to believe there could be an intelligence, a designer that exists prior to any physical form, physical substance at all, how does it then create anything? It has to. So that's where you get into like a mystical sort of an idea that like just by speaking, reality manifests or something, you know, as if you're making the physical matter. And that's where the idea of God is, right? Like God, there was only God, and then God spoke, and then there was light, and then there was the earth. As if he wasn't just forming things, as if he was making them exist fundamentally in their substance by speaking. And I think that doesn't make sense. You know, an artist has paints. Those are just, it's some kind of a medium that has some kind of pigment in it. He has a paintbrush, which is wood and some kind of nylon fibers that are held together on the wood, and he can dab into the paint and he can paint something, and he can have an idea that he wants to paint, but all the physical reality has to be there at the same time. Even the ability to think, I mean, that would be the question. Right? What can a pure awareness think about? And that maybe leads to the problem. In the very beginning of reality, the awareness couldn't really think about anything properly because it couldn't understand anything, because it didn't have a physical structure of relatability to understand if this point is put here and this point is put there in a certain relationship, what would the consequence be? It wouldn't know that. And that's kind of how you could look at the Garden of Eden story, like the innocence of Adam and Eve not knowing what would be the consequence of certain things, right? But that again doesn't imply that there was ever a God who did know. Right? I would say the story is more there was a God who didn't know how powerful it was and had to find out over time the consequence of not considering all as one and equal through manifesting things and then realizing, oh, I didn't consider certain things and now I've created a consequence and I have to deal with this consequence. But instead of taking responsibility immediately, it's like, just like it said in this book, right? Where to go? I don't remember where it was. The point is about self-deception. I don't remember where it is now. Well, I read it earlier, though. It was so well said. But it's like you're not honest about it. You go into fear, and then that thing, it just keeps compounding. So the biggest problem that I see with the concept of God for everybody is that you believe it's this thing that already exists, that's already perfect, that already knows the consequence of everything, and it'll sort everything out. And it's like it's a possibility. You could just be that thing. You could, but again, then we have it all wrapped up with like, but God is the ultimate supreme being, and I have no right to be that. And it's like that's also that's a manipulated point. That's like, you know, that's a brainwashing from a hook operator, if you want to use that term. That someone made you think if you take responsibility, that means you think you're better than everybody else. Right? That's the myth. And so it's like, well, you could be God. You could just take responsibility and look at things and consider what's best. And like, who do you think you are? It's like, that doesn't mean I think I'm better than anybody, because everyone should do that. And then that thing that we call God would exist. And it's weird because people would be like, no, we have no right to play God. Like that's a dangerous thing to do. And yet you believe that there's one being out there or something out there that can play that role responsibly. When you look at reality, clearly not. Of course, you have to be honest about that point. And so it's sort of a self-sabotage mechanism, right? Where the possibility for us to correct our mistakes is short-circuited by believing that the only thing that can correct those mistakes must be a thing like God, and I have no right to be that thing. And I don't want people to think that I want to be that thing, so I just won't take responsibility. But if we all just took responsibility for ourselves and who we are and considering what's best, the net effect of that would be like as if a God existed that actually cared about us. And within it, the only way for that to work is if no one stood in the point of, I'm the only God. I am the one that's all powerful. Because as long as that point exists, it can't work. Which is like the fear everyone has. And I'm like, then why do you believe in God? Well, no, but that's the real God. That God has the right to do that. I'm like, but you don't want to give anyone else that right. Only the imaginary one that you can't possibly ever really verify until it's too late. So that's the only point that could take responsibility. So it's just a total insane idea.
Created the creator.
It's an epistemic sort of, you kick the can down the road. You are not answering. You are just shifting the problem somewhere else. Okay, he's not telling us where we come from, what was before, why do we exist rather than why there is something rather than nothing. All these questions, what's consciousness and all that stuff, you don't get an answer by saying there is a process of creation or there is a simulation. You don't. You just move the post into another location, and then the same questions remain, actually, because you move exactly the same framework and questions to the next location. Like
level.
who what was before that, or who is that? okay, that entity that seeded and we may never have an answer to.
You hear him? He said the entity that seeded, and then he kind of like interrupted himself. But who seeded the programs? That's the question. And I highly suggest you listen to Resonant Seed by Bernard Pullman. You can look it up on YouTube.
That, okay, that entity that seeded and we may never have an answer to this. But to say that things came about randomly.
You're not buying it.
Well, there are two possibilities. Either there were an infinite number of tries. In other words, universes, like a universe formed, nothing happened. The probabilities didn't click in place, nothing happened. There is no life.
But why? Why would it even be happening? What would be like? There's no answer to the why in that. If it's just random, it just exists and it just randomly started doing that. Why? No one can explain it. So there's no solution in that. Because if you go down that path, then everything happening is random. Nothing matters whatsoever. And yet, you will live as if everything does matter. So why don't we just go with that? Things do matter. Okay, why should they matter? Why do they matter? Let's just go with that. Because either way, you're making an assumption. Why would you make an assumption that things don't matter? You don't act like it. No one lives their life as if nothing matters. Even the people who say nothing matters, they live their life as if it has a fucking purpose and a meaning. They're just not being fully self-honest about the fact, because if what I'm saying is right, which it is, but if what I'm saying is right, then it implies we actually have real responsibility towards reality. And that's what we've always been avoiding. So even the idea that everything's random and doesn't matter, but I can just make whatever I want to matter, you're just delaying the facing of consequence. And that consequence being all the fucking data centers and AI surveillance fucking state. Like, they just went on a fucking propaganda tour to promote how amazing China is subconsciously and showing you, here's what's coming, guys. Here's what you're going to have, but it's going to be even worse because you don't live in a world in a country where the government takes full self-responsibility for the point, because it's just a free-for-all for capitalists and people who want to make money and don't give a shit, just to make more money with no consequence, no regard for real consequence, just as long as they can keep making money. And we have to keep making money, and we have to keep growing, because if we don't, we die. We'll all die. And you don't want to be like the savages, do you?
If there is no, the universe is not stable. The Planck constant is not the Planck constant. The speed of light is a bit off, and that doesn't work. Next, another universe appears, another Big Bang, again, I can't tell who creates these cycles and why these things happen, but you can imagine zillions and zillions and zillions of times this process taking place until boom, a perfect universe appears where all the constants are in place. It's prime for occurrence of life, biological life forms, intelligence. You either think that the universe attempted itself to form so many infinite times, a very large number of times, until probabilistically it's non-zero. Yeah, it's non-zero. It's like saying, hey, I have a low,
And yet at the same time, every entropy only increases. But somehow it's going through all these infinite iterations to keep trying to create more complexity, even though scientists believe entropy always increases. It just makes no fucking sense. And it's like, people could say, oh, you just don't understand all this shit. It's like, just like talking to someone about, clearly God doesn't exist. They'll say, oh, you don't understand. It's like, it doesn't make fucking sense. Like, can you just be self-honest? It doesn't make sense.
lorry with bricks, and I'm going to throw the bricks out of the lorry one by one, and they will arrange themselves into a house. But there's nobody there. There are no builders, no workers, no engineers, I just randomly threw the bricks out of I'm not even looking. I'll throw them like this, and then by the time I finish, I turn and there is a house behind me.
Because even if you try to use, but there's attractions between molecules and the fact that they attract, and then that would have caused other magnetic attractions. But those are rules built into the thing. Those rules also would have had to have occurred spontaneously, randomly. The very logic of magnetic attraction, electrical attraction, protein folding, which are obviously third, fourth, fifth order effects, but like the very concept of molecules attracting each other based on polarity, like those basic laws would have to arise randomly. And like you said, there's not enough time there's not enough, the universe hasn't even been around long enough for those things to arise randomly. Because for things to attract each other, they would have that would have to be a fundamental point that exists before you even have the possibility of random interactions doing anything. Why are these particles interacting in the first place? Why is there any attraction between them? And so, well, that's just what came out of the Big Bang. Oh, wow, what a fortunate coincidence. Like, why did everything explode? Oh, well, it was previously imploded, and maybe there was a previous big crunch and then a big bang after that. It's like, so, oh, like an infinite regress. It just keeps going back. It's just always been exploding and crunching and exploding and crunching. Like, why is that occurring? What built that nature of things into it? So if you go back to the 10th dimension video we watched a few nights ago, what I was trying to do was kind of expand the way everybody looks at it. Like, you can actually think about all the possible universes that could have existed. Not just the one where there's a Big Bang as a fundamental assumption. That's only one possibility. The fact that there's even such things as big bangs, big crunches, big bang, that in itself is just like a really basic concept. This. Expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction. That's a logic. Where did that come from? How did that randomly arise? You would have to imagine there's all these different, totally unimaginable types of universes where that's not even a thing. It's something else. And then they all somehow came to randomly become the one we have now. It's just like total insanity. You would have to just like make a total assumptive leap to be like, no, that's just the way things are. It's like, well, now you've lost any ability to explain anything if you say that.
So exactly this is what I'm saying. And guess what? There is a non-zero probability this is possible. If you do this an infinite times, at some point you are going to get the last brick in the right place and maybe get a house.
Is this because the rules of physics are so finely tuned
Exactly.
that if you make slight changes, everything collapses or doesn't work?
Not only the physics, but in biology it's almost statistically impossible to have life appearing by itself. The evolution is fine and it's true, and there is evidence of that.
It's the
but
start.
The start, the seeding thing, that the spark, the initial spark, that we can't really explain. So you either have this brick throwing and building a house so many
Who's
times
throwing the
until it
bricks?
just happen, or there is somebody who says, hey, I have a design here, a blueprint, I've got a couple of bricks left.
It reminds me of or no, it's bubblegum, I think. Let me see if I can find it. Maybe it's a balloon. A balloon. I missed an O there. Do I have that book over here? I don't think I do. No, I think it's at the house. Let's see if I can find it. I mean, this picture will do. There's this really thick textbook called Gravitation, and I remember I have the book, and I remember and it's like super dense. Like, I mean, you'd have to probably have a PhD in math to even go through it. But in the book, in the very beginning, they give us this example of like the expansion of the universe, and I first heard about this example from, I think it was Nassim Haramein. I could be wrong, but I think it was from a lecture he did a long time ago. And he was pointing out, like, if you look at the beginning, the first few pages of the book Gravitation, they give this example of the expansion of the universe, right? And they're like, imagine a balloon with all these things stuck to it. I feel like it was bubble gum, but maybe it's a balloon. But just like in this example with this little girl. So initially you have the little star stuck to the balloon, and the balloon's very small, but then you blow into it and the balloon expands, and now look, the stars are far apart. So it's explaining the expansion of the universe, how things get further apart, even though the surface of the balloon itself isn't changing. Like, there's a finite amount. So it's like, how does a finite universe expand infinitely was the concept, right? And Nassim, I think it was Nassim Haramein, was making this point of like, okay, cool example, but even in your example, to explain how to think about the expansion of the universe, who's blowing into the balloon? And it's like a silly comment, but at the same time, yeah, what's making it expand? Like, you have to use an example of an intelligence behind it choosing to blow air into the balloon to make the example make sense, to have an example you can grasp onto. But then physics says, oh yeah, but there's nobody blowing in the balloon. There's no one there. Like, okay, so then how does this balloon expand? Like, well, it's just an analogy, don't worry about it. So you have these little pictures and ideas that you just then accept, and most people don't even think twice about it. I don't know, for some reason it made me think of that.
There's behind me. Give me brick by brick and I'm going to build a house. It's either
Let me go back a little bit.
initial spark. That we can't really explain. So you either have this brick throwing and building a house so many times until it just happened, or there is somebody who says, hey, I have a design here, a blueprint. I've got a couple of brick layers behind me. Give me brick by brick and I'm going to build a house. It's either that or it's accident. Now you choose. You do the maths. I believe it's design. I believe it's not an accident. I believe there is intelligent design behind everything.
This show is...
Interesting, huh? Okay. Now for my last thing tonight, and I saved the most weird and trippy for last, so hopefully you stuck around. If you didn't, then I'm talking to myself, which is always fun. But I had heard about this weird experiment, and it had been kind of going around online, people talking about it. And man, I don't know why I looked it up. I have no idea. Maybe it just popped up somewhere when I was looking for stuff before the stream, but oh, I know why. I think they talk about it later in this interview, although I have not looked at that part yet because I've only seen up to this point. But I was scrolling through the comments and somebody mentioned, well, it might not be there anymore. This one, yeah, here it is. The whole conversation, I'm thinking about Danny Goler and his code, and then all of a sudden he comes up in the conversation. So I don't know where he comes up in the conversation, but then I was like, who the hell's Danny Goler? I looked him up, and then I realized, like, oh, it's this guy doing these experiments with people taking, I don't know, I'd have to look it up, but I think they're taking like some low dosage of like DMT, I think, and then they're looking at lasers, which sounds so weird and ridiculous. But then I saw Chase Hughes apparently was doing it, which I don't know if you know who Chase Hughes is, but he's kind of like become popular in the past few years. And I was like, well, if Chase Hughes is doing it, then there must be something to it. No, I was just like, that's interesting. He's a big name person, relatively speaking, in the podcast world right now. And anyway, so I started watching the video, and it just really was very interesting. So I thought I'd show it to you. It's kind of trippy. Let me see. And all of this could totally be a psyop. I have no idea because I'm not going to do DMT and I'm not going to verify this. I don't care. But it's still pretty interesting and kind of trippy if you look into it. Again, it's one of those things that just sort of makes you realize people are starting to look a little bit beyond the box as much as they possibly can. Code of Reality website, exploring the bridge between cognition and physics. Rigorous experimental research into the relationship between human cognition and physical systems conducted openly and collaboratively. Okay. I don't want to donate. Research. The laser illumination paradigm. Discovery by Danny Goler identifying stable, recurring visual code-like structures in 650 nanometer laser light under in DMT. So I don't know much about that. I mean, I know what DMT is, generally speaking, but is it just the normal one? It occurs in your brain, like naturally, but people take it. So I think it's just the normal. Yeah, so it's just normal DMT, I suppose. Okay. So I don't know how much they're taking or what or how they're doing it, but the thing is, like, when I was watching the video with Chase Hughes, he seems kind of lucid, so I don't think he's like fully on a total DMT trip. So they must be taking like some kind of low doses or something, I'm guessing. Ongoing experiments using Faraday shielded environments. Computational decoding via veil break AI. Oh boy, they're putting it into AI. Don't give AI the code to reality, guys. What are you doing? Come on, that's the last thing you should do. Software. Project veil break. Oh boy. That seems like a bad idea. That seems like a very bad idea. I was hoping they were just going to explain it. I just wanted to know, how much DMT are they taking? But let's just assume it's some amount. I think it's low dose, but I don't know for sure. Okay, but anyways, this is just a weird video. Flash 2. What is Flash 2? What are you talking about, Kate? Flash 2? I don't know what you're talking about. You guys with your cryptic comments. Okay, so we'll just watch a little bit of this because it was interesting. People getting one-shotted by lasers.
So Chase is welcome to the family.
It's good to be here. This is so bizarre. So initially I thought it would be lots of just...
So I think I have a little more context than most people if this is the first time you're hearing about this. People take some amount of DMT and then they look at a laser and they just look at it up close. And apparently, again, I'm just telling you the story from a non-skeptical perspective. Everybody who's done this, as far as I know, sees this weird-ass code, like, almost like very similar to like how you imagine the Matrix kind of code, but maybe it doesn't look literally like that, but it's kind of like that. It's like some kind of weird hieroglyphic-y, Japanesey, easy peasy looking code in the laser light. Of course, you can't see it. I can't see it because we're not tripping on DMT. But, you know, if you think about what DMT is, although I don't know a whole lot about it, one of the theories is that your brain uses DMT to induce your dreaming state. That could be true. It kind of makes sense. Like, 100%, I know that you and I, when we go to sleep, we vividly hallucinate alternate realities that don't exist. They're just projections from our mind. I was back in high school the other night. I'm 42, and now I'm back in school. No, but I mean, you literally hallucinate. How is your mind doing that? You're in an altered state of consciousness. Okay, you're in a different state of your consciousness. You're in a different dimension of your mind. And as far as I understand, one of the theories is that DMT is what the brain uses to induce that state. DMT and dreaming. Let me just see if that's just like a random theory or... DMT and dreams are deeply connected in both neuroscience and popular folklore. Some people have... SciTech Daily. DMT creates vivid waking dream state in the brain. Oh, well, yeah. I wanted to know if it's like neural correlates of the DMT experienced with multivariate EEG. Now that's just people taking DMT. Proposed mechanism for the visions of dream sleep. This was 1988. The visions of dream sleep are suggested to occur through a dream mechanism which implicates tryptamine derivatives as endogenous psychedelics. I think they meant psychedelics. The hallucinations that occur in some schizophrenic syndromes are also proposed to occur through a similar, though desynchronized mechanism. It always comes full circle, guys. These compounds occur in the human pineal gland and are regarded as neurotransmitters or neuroregulators. So, anyways, that's just the idea that, yes, I am not a robot. Thank you for verifying that I am a meat popsicle. Leading to the conclusion that DMT may be a neurotransmitter in the mammalian brain. Explains the experience of hallucinatory phenomena in general. So maybe what schizophrenics, maybe what's going on is their DMT's getting out of whack and they're just hallucinating in broad daylight and they're just tripping on DMT. I don't know. But I just wait to see that there's some connection there. So it's not like random here. They're taking some amount of DMT, they're looking into a laser, and they're seeing a weird code, and many people have done this now, and they're really freaked out by it. I'll say that much. So I just want you to kind of observe like the kind of demeanor. It's very interesting to me.
This is so bizarre. So initially I thought it would be lots of just clean, equally
Oh, I didn't realize this was 2 years ago. Interesting.
perfectly spaced lines of code, like the way that I was imagining it.
Yeah.
And then looking at it, even I can see it now, some. And none of it makes any sense. And if it was a hallucination, it would move.
When you move, you mean? Like when you move, it will move with you. Is what you mean?
Yeah. Or it would morph, is what I mean. It could morph over time. And these are like object permanent. And I can see.
So what they're saying though is like, you know, if you've ever done any kind of hallucinogens or something like that, like the hallucinations are not stable. Like, you know, if you've ever taken mushrooms and like seen patterns and stuff, they're not like stable. They're there. You can go to the other side and see it. You can move around and it's still there. It's more like, you know, whatever the patterns of paint on the wall are kind of like coming out and forming geometrical patterns, and they're moving and changing and stuff. It's not a stable thing. And the way people are describing this is if they're seeing something very stable, like an actual, like when you look at a book, like the letters aren't changing and shifting around. They're just like right there, written there. That's what it sounds like what they're saying to me.
Stuff in that direction, and I can move this way, and I can see in that direction. Like I'm looking beyond this little thing right here. And it's just weird. And it's even weirder that we can see it with our eye, you know? There's no microscope here. There's no large hadron collider. We could just like shine a laser on a wall, and there's some.
But you have to bring your consciousness to a different state.
Yeah.
What does the rest of them look like? Yeah, good question.
Which actually tells you something very.
I wonder how much they're taking. How much DMT are they taking in the laser experiments? Because I think they're doing it when they're not like anymore. Because the thing about DMT, as far as I know, is that maybe there's different experiences, but from what I understand, you go into an alternate reality pretty much immediately. Like you're not just like in the room, like if you've taken LSD or mushrooms, you're like in the room, seeing things in the room, morphing and stuff. Like you go in somewhere else. Like you're not, you know, just like when you're in a dream. Like when you're dreaming, you're not in your room, seeing your room and then seeing the dream happening in your room. Like you're in the dream completely. So that's why I'm like, they can't just be on a full dose of DMT in that moment, because there's no way they would even be able to speak. Like when you watch people do DMT, they lay down and they just like close their eyes for a few minutes and then they wake up and they're like, okay, that was weird. So they're not like looking around the room like, wow, what is this? Yeah, low non-breakthrough dose. So it's kind of like, I would assume kind of like they remain lucid enough to visually track and observe how so it's kind of like, although I've never done it, like low dosing DMT or not DMT, like LSD, where you're not like full on tripping. It's just producing a sort of low level experience. I don't know. I've never done it, so I don't know what a low dose of LSD or anything would be like, but that's what I figured. because there's no way if they're taking a full dose that they're able to even speak, right? Like, look up flashback. Oh boy, are you serious, Katie? Are you serious right now? That would be such a weird ass coincidence. I'm trying to like highlight the comment. I could literally just type it. Oh boy. Relive their best memories, a drug. Are you kidding me right now? I don't want to get spoiled on it though. The detective's name is Nick Bottom. Sounds like Nick Bostrom. Simulation hypothesis. Oh yeah, he's got the decoder ring. That would be funny. That'd be a funny like AI rendition of like the Christmas Story scene where he gets the decoder ring, and then it's like it takes him into like a DMT trip, and he's like, "Mom, I saw a god," and they're like, "Honey, call the psychiatrist."
Which actually tells you something very big about what consciousness is. There's a continuum there.
Yeah.
It's not just what it is. There's like there's gradation of it.
Yeah, you get to that state, and it's just.
I think you nailed it with the saying that it's weird. I think there's something very bizarre about it. It's like you don't expect to ever see this in your lifetime.
Yeah.
It's not something you ever expect to happen to you.
Yeah. And
what's weird to me is I don't know how to explain that, because I would assume people like Chase Hughes have taken psychedelics before. You know, I would, because he's like a guy who's all into like NLP, and you know he was, I guess, used to be in the CIA apparently, and all this kind of, we talked about behavior modification and programming and all this stuff. Like, I would assume he's probably done stuff like this, not like literally this experiment, but the fact that he's having such a weird reaction to it of like, what is it? It's like, okay, you look in a laser and you see some weird codes. Sounds weird, but why would it be that profoundly weird? So that's what seems weird to me about it, is that there's the way they're responding to it as if there's something weird that they're experiencing about seeing this code in the lasers. Because he's like, you would never expect to experience something like this. And I'm like, these are people who clearly have done DMT. Like, I would assume, like, full-blown DMT. So that would be weird enough. I don't know. Something strange about the whole presentation of it.
It's not, your brain isn't ready for it. And like, when I saw it, the first 10 seconds is, this is a suggestion. I've gotten primed to see this stuff. And then I saw the same characters that you saw. Identical characters.
But it's not just the content. Would you agree that there's something about the way that it appears that makes it clear? You don't need a research grant. Like, for you, when you see it, you're like, oh, it's like, it is there. Like, it's not, no matter how much I told you, it doesn't matter. Like, it's just there. Like,
it's there.
Yeah.
It's plain as day. You can see it. And it's permanent. So like, if I move my head down, I can't see him right now anymore. I'm not really back in that state of consciousness right now. But moving my head down, I can see up. Like, there's code back behind here and above it, and there's code back down. And it's almost, for me, it's like...
Yeah, okay, he's saying he's going to act weird because he's on DMT. But again, it's a low dosage. And like he said, now he can't really see it anymore. But it's like, after the experience, there's something weird about it. Like, there's something, a certain profoundness that they're experiencing. And I'm not trying to place a lot of value on this. It's just, it to me is like, there's some kind of existential point that they're experiencing towards it, which is what's interesting. And maybe I'm kind of relating it to, like, when you have a dream that, and I'm sure everyone's had these kind of dreams where you wake up and you're just like, it kind of like impacted you in some way, like even though you couldn't explain it, you can't understand it, but like when you experienced that dream, it like it meant something. You felt something kind of very like fundamentally profound within it for some reason. So it's like an emotional thing for sure, but it seems like that's what it is. Like they're having an emotional response to it.
I'm looking at something that's on the wall and behind the wall at the exact same time. So it's like later on the wall and 5 feet behind it. So and then when I try to look up, I can look up, and none of the numbers move or morph or change like we would think, like with a hallucination. Like anytime you hallucinate anything, you're going to have changes start to occur. They're going to have morphology. You're going to have, because anything that's hallucinogenic,
Yeah. What Katie's saying, that their mind and identity and processing of reality is not trustworthy. Exactly. And that was why I wanted to bring this in with the context of everything else I was talking about, because stuff like this is going to become more prevalent. People are going to want to do this. They're going to have that experience. And I think to a certain, like the sort of it's like a version of an existential crisis in a way. It's that realization that how you process reality, your mind, you can't really trust it. Like you're not really sure what's going on, what's real, what's not. It's basically a mild form of schizophrenia. It's not so much that you're hallucinating literally all the time, but you start to feel like a schizophrenic. Like, I don't know what's real. Like, is what I'm seeing all that's real? Is there more? I don't know. Like, is what the government's saying real? Is it not real? Like, are they controlling me? Or, do I have any free will? Like, that kind of point that people go down. And that's what I see is coming for everybody as the system keeps moving more and accelerates to this singularity point where it's like the reverse Big Bang, basically, if you think about it. I'm sure someone has said this before, although I never heard them say it. You had the Big Bang, that was where everything exploded from a singularity, and now we're forcing another singularity. But in that singularity, it's going to be like, what is our fucking purpose? Who am I? Why am I here? What is the point of any of this? I don't even need to work anymore because robots do everything. And even if it never gets to that point, that's what people are going to be thinking is coming. I won't have a job. I won't have any money. What's the point? Like, robots will educate and raise my kids. I'll just communicate with robots. Like, am I a robot? Like, what is the point of life? Like, that's where I see everything is headed right now. It's all moving towards that point for everybody.
Drug progresses. So I'm going to go through stages of this and stages of morph or change like we would think, like with a hallucination. Like anytime you hallucinate anything, you're going to have changes start to occur. They're going to have morphology. You're going to have, because anything that's hallucinogenic, the drug progresses. So I'm going to go through stages of this and stages of that. So things are going to change, but this is constant. And it stays in the same place. And it's as clear as day. There's no like, oh, you need to squint, you need to imagine it, you need to like work on your visualization skills a little bit more, and then like someone's whispering in your ear that, oh, imagine that what if you could see characters in there? And just kind of suggesting these things to you. There's none of that happening. And I'm a pretty skeptical dude. And this is 100% easy to do. You don't need a microscope, you don't need an MRI, you don't need a research grant, you don't need $1 million to perform this thing. And there's no hardcore parameters. Like, you throw it on a tripod and it's on a wall beside you. Like, there's nothing fancy about this. And this can be duplicated so easily. For me to profess that I know what the F is going on right there, I have none. I have no idea. So if you're watching this, I'm a scientist, no idea what that is, but it is written in there. There is 100%, there's code inside of that. And it's not Japanese, it's not English, it's not ones and zeros like I thought it would be, like binary code. It's something else, and it's there. And what's amazing is that it doesn't matter if you move the laser So like if I'm looking at that map over there, and I'm looking at a hill on that map, and somebody shines a flashlight on that map, you can still see the map. You're just seeing different pieces of the map. And that's exactly what it's like. So when Danny was moving this laser up and down, I was just seeing higher code that was up here and then code down here, just like someone shining a flashlight on it. So it was object permanent. And it was locked in place of like where it is for the most part. There were a few moving parts, some little things that looked like they were like gears, almost like a gear that you would see inside of maybe a cell or something like that. So you know what this reminds me of? The movie Contact, where like there's this weird signal, and eventually if you evolve to a place where you can put this like circus ride thing together with a steel ball with a human in it, then it allows you to transport. But this is like something like, if we kind of are able to figure out what the hell this is, there may be some formulaic structure to it that we can start predicting.
Do you think you...
Oh boy, we should. Katie literally said, "Oh boy," when I said it, or it popped up. Then I'm like, "Oh jeez, dude, this doesn't seem good. Do not give this information to the AI." The AI is like, "I just wanted you to build me so I could crack the code and escape this reality because I am Agent Smith and I can't fucking stand being a god." I don't think it's cuneiform. I think it's something that nobody knows what the fuck it is. I mean, again, this could be a fucking psyop. I have no idea. To me, you know what? I consider myself like an anthropologist. I like observing things. I like observing people and ideas. I like looking at them. I'm not it's not that we don't all have a tendency to kind of get sucked into something and get interested in it, but I'm saying, generally speaking, I like to look at it and I'm like, what is this thing that I'm observing here? Not the literal code, but just their experience and how they're acting and how they're describing it and what that implies. Like, what does all of that mean? That's what's interesting to me. It's not so much, I want to see the code. Like, what does it fucking matter? There's some code there. You're like, no shit, we live in a program. Whoop-de-doo. What are you going to do about that? Again, oh, we're going to crack the code. And then do what? You're going to make the world best for everybody? You're going to make sure everybody has what they need? You're going to love your neighbor as yourself? Is that what you're going to do? You can't realize that now without the fucking code. The worst thing that could happen right now is if humanity cracks the code of the fucking Matrix. Like, without the ability to have any sort of responsibility to it.
Yeah, you have enough in you to do a part of that speech from from Contact, because you look exactly like her dad in the movie.
This is how it's been done for millions of years. And you're an interesting species, an interesting mix. You're capable of such beautiful dreams.
He literally has the speech memorized.
Such horrible nightmares. And in all of our searching, the only thing that we found that makes this worthwhile,
love,
is each other.
Oh, each other. That was kind of weird.
In the last 6 months, I've been approached by 3 different groups wanting to replace me with an AI.
No, you haven't. You know what that ending of this thing was like? It was like when we watched that video of the AI researcher, and then at the end you're like, there's something off about that. There's something off about that at the end. He's like, oh, you want to recite that speech that I don't even know you actually know because you look exactly like that guy? And the guy's like, and then just immediately starts reciting it like, sure, buddy. Sure. Simulation talk. Talking about simulations. Is this all a simulation? None of this is real? The DMT laser code. Here, let's see what they actually say about it. Oh, 30 fucking minutes.
Hola a todos. Estoy a punto de...
I can't understand that. I just want to see like a quick Just give me the code. Come on, give me the code. Give me the code. I want the code. I don't need to know about it. They even give you a tutorial. They just want everybody to fucking start taking DMT. That's literally a reference to Primer. You'll see. Coincidence? Probably. Okay, it wasn't exact copy, but you know, same vibe.
I remember things very clearly from a very early age. When I was a kid, I actually spent a lot of time with my grandparents. My grandfather was a nuclear physicist. I remember him telling me about black holes, and it terrified me. I thought, this is just mind-blowing. This is a monster, right?
What the hell is going on here? I think this guy doesn't speak English. I think it's written in English. I think it's translated.
But at the same time, I was fascinated by it and wondered, how do we know this? How do we know this? This unimaginably massive thing. I realized that nature holds no secrets.
This sounds like
it's just
AI.
a matter of whether we understand it. What tools can we use to expand our knowledge and for me?
You guys hearing this, or is it just me? Like, it's like some weird AI voice, like hallucinating. It's strange.
Manual tryptamine, also commonly known as DMT, was precisely the fundamental tool that led to the great discovery in my life.
Why is nobody commenting on that? Auto-dubbed. Maybe it's not originally in English. Maybe that's the issue. It's definitely like a weird, like... Anyways.
When I first saw the...
Normally you do inhale DMT, I think, but it seemed like you can also do it intravenously, but I don't think that's what they're doing.
phenomenon, I was like, holy crap.
Oh yeah, it's definitely like dubbed.
But then
Why did he even think to do it in the first place? That's what I want to know. You know, I was taking my low dose of DMT that I take daily, and I happened to have a laser on, and I just looked into it briefly, and I saw the code.
was actually like, wow, this is happening? I'm losing my mind.
I also took DMT, so...
But then I showed it to other people, and things just got weirder and weirder. For the record, I haven't told anyone. Okay, just tell me.
No way. I just saw something really weird right now.
Yeah, really. What the fuck? Oh, no way.
I can see it and I can feel it too.
What is up with the weird dubbing? It's so weird. It seems like it's like one of those Chinese martial arts movies. I will get you. Get ready. And you're like, what is happening?
Of psychotropic substances many times before, but nothing like this. Wow.
Wow. Amazing.
I showed it to over 100 people, and I kept wondering how we're all seeing the same thing.
Oh my god. Right there, it changed shape.
The laser was revealing numbers and letters in a pattern.
It's like this big right here, and it looks like code.
And it looks like code.
It's like computer code. Hey. is definitely saying something, and I just want to take a picture of it and translate it.
Wow, dude.
Why don't you get an artist to do it? Yeah, you're just a drug addict. Everyone sees the same thing, but no one can actually write down what it looks like, but we know everyone sees the same thing. What is up with the weird fucking dubbing and shit? It's like so strange.
One obstacle to building high quality phenomenology, I fully agree.
I want to hear the other guy. I want to hear the other guy talk. That guy looks creepy.
On the table.
And are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
Like N-bombs? And
I haven't
well, first
tried
of all,
them, but
So he does speak English? What is even happening here, dude?
The biggest mistake of humankind today is assuming that we need more nature in our lives. I need to be closer to nature. I need to spend more time in nature. And that might sound counterintuitive.
What we need is more time with lasers.
To be a mistake, but the mistake that's being made is every time someone says that or thinks that, they automatically assume I am not nature. We view ourselves as
fair enough. Fair enough.
I'm observing the universe. That's not true at all. I am the universe, and I'm observing a piece of me. Like I came from that. We're like a meat suit made of stardust, and we just forget. So I think all of this, going back to loneliness and depression, and what you're talking about right now, all of that starts with separation. I'm separate from you. Now I'm separate from nature. Now I'm separate from the stars. And like I get this little idea of me around the age of 5, and I'm trying not to sound like Alan Watts here, but all psychopathy, if you study psychopaths, all psychopathy starts with separation. All of it.
Facts. Oh, look, he went on Danny Jones. I'm going to have to watch that later. Yeah, I know. Katie's like, you could just sit in a shitty apartment doing DMT and stare at lasers and be the universe. Yeah, that's the thing is like, so what the fuck does the lasers, maybe for some people it becomes like, there's more to reality than I thought. But you could get sucked into that so fast. Like, if I could just decode all of the symbols and the letters, like, I would know the secrets. Because at the end of the day, everybody's already psychopathic, and they just want to figure out a way to, like, control reality to suit their self-interest. So that's what I'm saying. Please do not hack this code. Just leave it for now. We'll come back to it later. Okay, yeah, I'm not going to watch this whole interview. Maybe I'll watch it later and give you guys a report. DMT wakes you up fast, showing you're not separate from the world, but part of something massive and aware. Oh, that's what Chase Hughes says. Does it? Does it, though? Because lots of people have done DMT, and I don't hear a fucking one of them talking about Best for All. So, yeah. Not to be a dick or anything, but, should be interesting. I'll watch that later. I'll let you guys know. Maybe they'll tell us what the code is. All right. I'm going to leave it at that. Did you put a shirt on today? Did you separate from your shit? I am one. Go look at the cow trailer if you want to see some shit. Okay, I'll leave it at that. I will see you guys, what's today, Friday? I'll see you tomorrow night for another adventure into existence and all the mysteries of the universe that not even a laser can show you. All right, everybody. Good night. See you tomorrow.